I didn't need grand promises, she said, her voice steady even as her hands shook while removing her apron. I just needed you to notice me. He stood on the other side of the counter, coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. What are you talking about? I'm here every day. You're here every day for caffeine and silence, she interrupted, folding the green apron with careful precision. Not for me. Never for me. Emma. It's fine, she smiled, and it was the saddest thing he'd ever seen. I'm the one who made the mistake. I thought quiet love could be enough. That all the small things I did, remembering how you take your coffee, saving your table, learning your moods, that maybe those things mattered. They do matter. To who? The question hung between them. Because they clearly didn't matter to you, Daniel. You never even asked my last name. The morning rush swirled around them. Business people grabbing their orders, students claiming tables, the espresso machine hissing steam. But in that moment, the small cafe felt impossibly silent. This is my last shift, she continued, setting the apron on the counter. I'm done serving coffee to someone who sees me as part of the furniture. That's not, he set down his cup, something like panic flickering across his usually controlled features. Emma, wait. I've been waiting, she said quietly. For 3 years, I've been waiting for you to see me as more than the woman who makes your morning perfect. But you can't notice what you're not looking for. She walked toward the back room, and he just stood there, surrounded by the comfort of his routine. The cafe he came to every morning at 7:15, the corner table by the window, the flat white made exactly how he liked it. Realizing too late that all of it, every bit of it, had been quietly made perfect by someone he'd never truly seen. 3 years earlier, Daniel Cross walked into Cornerstone Cafe the way he did everything, with purpose and precision. It was his third day in the neighborhood after moving from his penthouse in Midtown to a brownstone in Brooklyn. The change was supposed to help, get him out of the constant hustle, give him space to think, maybe even sleep without waking at 3 a.m. to check stock reports. The cafe was small, unpretentious. Exposed brick, mismatched furniture, actual books on shelves instead of design objects. The kind of place that felt lived in rather than curated. A woman behind the counter looked up as he entered. Young, late 20s maybe, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that took him in with a single, assessing glance. "What can I get you?" she asked. "Flat white, extra shot, oat milk if you have it." She didn't write it down, just nodded and turned to the espresso machine. He watched her work, efficient, focused, the kind of competence he appreciated in any field. When she handed him the cup 3 minutes later, it was exactly what he'd wanted, down to the temperature. "Thanks." "Corner table by the window, open," she said, already turning to the next customer. "Good light if you're working." He took the table, pulled out his laptop, and spent 2 hours managing his hedge fund from a coffee shop in Brooklyn. When he left, he nodded to her. She nodded back. That was the entire interaction. It should have stayed that way. Transactional, professional, the relationship between a customer and a service worker. Except he came back the next day. And the day after that. And somewhere in the repetition, in the quiet routine of it, something shifted without him noticing. Emma learned him in increments. Week 1, he always ordered the same thing. Flat white, extra shot, oat milk. Never varied, never asked for recommendations. Week 2, he took the corner table when available. When it wasn't, he'd wait, working on his phone until it opened up. Never complained. Never asked her to save it. Week 3, he was reading the Financial Times but kept a novel in his bag. She'd glimpsed the cover when he pulled out his laptop. Literary fiction, not business books. Interesting. Month 2, he had bad days and good days, though most people wouldn't notice. But she noticed. The good days, he'd nod when she handed him his coffee. Bad days, he barely registered her existence, already deep in whatever crisis was playing out on his screen. Month 4, she started timing his arrival. 7:15 a.m., almost to the minute. The kind of precision that spoke to either rigid routine or obsessive control. Maybe both. Month 6, she learned he was Daniel Cross. Not from him. He'd never introduced himself. But from overhearing a phone call, from the way other business people sometimes recognized him, from the day a Wall Street Journal reporter tried to interview him and he'd politely declined. Before we continue, can I ask you a question? Where in the world are you watching from? Comment below because we'd love to know how far these stories travel, and hit that subscribe button. Hedge fund manager, 34. Worth somewhere north of $2 billion according to the internet search she absolutely did not do on her break. She totally did it on her break. Month 8, she realized she was in trouble. Because she'd started doing small things, unnecessary things. She'd hold his coffee until he arrived, making sure it was fresh, even when the morning rush meant drinks sat under the heat lamp. She'd save his table, politely suggesting to other customers that different seats had better light or outlets or whatever excuse came to mind. She learned his moods well enough to know when he needed silence and when he might tolerate small talk. Not that he ever initiated small talk. But once, during a particularly brutal snowstorm, she'd brought him a second coffee without asking. "On the house," she'd said, "you look frozen." He looked at her, really looked for maybe the first time, and said, "Thank you, Emma." Her name, he knew her name. Her heart had done something stupid in her chest. Year 1, she admitted to herself that she loved him. Quietly, hopelessly, in the way you love someone who exists in your daily life but never really sees you. She loved him in the flat whites she made perfect, in the tables she kept available, in the way she remembered he preferred his coffee slightly cooler than most people, that he hated when she used the wrong oat milk brand, that he needed the corner table because sitting with his back to the room made him tense. She loved him in observation and attention, and all the invisible labor of care that he never acknowledged because he didn't know it existed. Year 2, she started writing him into her journal. Today D seemed lighter, smiled when he left. I wonder what went right in his world. D was on the phone for an hour. Stressful call, I could tell by his shoulders. Made his coffee extra strong without asking. He didn't notice, but he needed it. Saw D with a woman today. Business meeting, probably. She laughed too loud at everything he said. He looked uncomfortable. Good. Wait, that's mean, I'm mean. Why am I mean about this? Year 3, she realized she had to quit. Because loving someone quietly was one thing. Spending 3 years hopping they'd notice you was pathetic. He would never see her. Not really. To him, she was the barista who made good coffee and somehow always had his table available. Part of the routine, like the weather or the subway schedule. Reliable, invisible, interchangeable. So she gave her 2 weeks' notice to Marcus, the cafe owner, and started looking for jobs that didn't involve serving coffee to the man she stupidly loved. Daniel noticed something was off 2 days into Emma's final week. The coffee was fine, the table was available, everything was exactly as it should be. Except Emma seemed distant, less present, going through the motions. "Everything okay?" he asked when she handed him his flat white. She looked surprised that he'd spoken. "Fine, why?" "You seem," he trailed off, not sure how to articulate it, "different." "Just tired," she turned away. "Enjoy your coffee." He sat at his corner table, laptop open, trying to focus on the portfolio adjustments his team had sent over. But he kept looking at Emma. Really looking, maybe for the first time in 3 years. She was pretty, he'd always vaguely registered that. But now he noticed details. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating. The small scar on her left hand from what was probably a coffee burn. The way she smiled at regular customers, genuine warmth that transformed her entire face. She never smiled at him like that. The realization was oddly disturbing. When he left that day, he paused at the counter. "Thanks for the coffee." Of course, professional, pleasant, distant. He walked out feeling like he'd failed a test he hadn't known he was taking. Emma's last day arrived on a Friday. She told Marcus not to make a big deal of it. No cake, no gathering, no sentimental goodbye. "You've been here 4 years," Marcus protested. "That deserves recognition." "I just want to finish my shift and go," she said. "Please." So Friday came. Her last day making flat whites and memorizing orders and pretending not to watch for Daniel Cross at 7:15 a.m. He arrived at 7:14. 1 minute early. Emma's hands trembled as she started his drink. 3 years of muscle memory, and suddenly she couldn't remember if he wanted one extra shot or two. "Emma." She looked up. Daniel was at the counter, not at his table. That was unusual. "Your coffee's almost ready. I need to talk to you." Her heart did that stupid thing again. "About?" He seemed uncertain, which was wrong. Daniel Cross was never uncertain. "Can we talk after your shift?" "Why?" "Because something been off this week and He ran his hand through his hair, frustration evident. "I don't know. I just feel like something's wrong and I need to understand what." She handed him his flat white, her expression carefully neutral. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's exactly as it's always been." "That's not true." "This is my last day," she said, the words coming out harsher than intended. "That's what's different. After today, you'll need to get your coffee from whoever replaces me. Probably won't even notice the difference." His face did something complicated. "Emma." "I need to get back to work." She turned away. "Enjoy your coffee, Daniel." She felt his eyes on her for the rest of the shift. Felt him watching from his corner table, not working, just watching. It was excruciating. At 2 p.m. her shift ended. She removed her apron for the last time, hugged Marcus, waved goodbye to her coworkers, and walked out without looking at Daniel's table. She made it 3 steps down the sidewalk when his voice stopped her. "Emma, wait." She turned. He was standing in front of the cafe, looking lost in a way that didn't fit his usual controlled demeanor. "What do you want?" she asked, and all the frustration of 3 years bled into her tone. "What could you possibly want from me now?" "I want to understand." "Understand what?" She laughed, bitter. "That I've been in love with you for 3 years. That I've structured my entire life around your routine. That every morning I woke up excited because I'd get to see you, even though you barely knew I existed." The words hung between them, devastating in their honesty. Daniel stared at her. "You what?" "I loved you quietly," she said, and tears finally spilled over. "I loved you in all the ways I knew how. Perfect coffee. Your table always available. Remembering your moods, your preferences, the 1,000 small things that made your mornings work. I loved you by paying attention, by noticing, by caring about the details of your life even though you never cared about mine." "That's not—" "You don't even know my last name," she interrupted. 3 years, Daniel. 3 years of me serving you coffee, of existing in your daily life, and you never once asked my last name. Never asked what I do when I'm not here. Never asked about my life or my dreams or anything that mattered to me." "I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't look." Her voice rose. "You didn't look because to you I was just the barista, part of the routine, useful but unremarkable, someone who made your life comfortable without requiring anything in return." "Emma," he stepped closer. "I didn't realize." "Of course you didn't." She wiped her tears, trying to salvage some dignity. "Because love isn't supposed to be quiet. It's supposed to be loud and obvious and impossible to miss. My mistake was thinking that maybe, just maybe, you'd notice someone who loved you enough to make your ordinary life extraordinary." She turned to walk away, and this time when he called her name, she didn't stop. Daniel stood on the sidewalk for 10 minutes after Emma disappeared around the corner. People flowed around him, the usual Friday afternoon crowd, rushing toward their weekends, their lives, their people who actually noticed them. He walked back into the cafe. Marcus was wiping down the counter, end-of-shift routine. He looked up when Daniel entered, and something in his expression was knowing, pitying. "She's not coming back," Marcus said before Daniel could speak. "I know." Daniel approached the counter like a man approaching a ledge. "Marcus, I need to ask you something. If it's about Emma's contact information, I can't give you that." "No, he struggled for words. "What's her last name?" Marcus studied him for a long moment. "Chen, Emma Chen." "Emma Chen." 3 years and he'd never known. "What else do I know?" Daniel asked, the question directed at himself as much as Marcus. "Everything." Marcus didn't soften it. "You don't know she has a master's in literature, that she works here mornings and tutors high school kids in the afternoons, that she's been writing a novel for 2 years, that she takes care of her grandmother who has Alzheimer's, that she dreams about opening a bookshop cafe someday." Each fact landed like a punch. "How do you know all this?" Daniel asked. "Because I asked." Marcus's tone was pointed. "Because I care about my employees as people, not just as service providers. Emma's been here 4 years. 4 years of showing up, working hard, being kind to everyone who walks through that door. And you came here every single day for 3 of those years and never learned a damn thing about her." "I didn't." Daniel stopped. Because what could he say? That he'd been busy, that he'd been focused on work, that he'd thought the quality of the coffee was what mattered. All of it was true. None of it was an excuse. "She loved you," Marcus said quietly. "Genuinely loved you. Not your money, not your status. You, the man who read novels in coffee shops and got quiet when stressed and needed your corner table because sitting with your back exposed made you anxious. She noticed all of that." "How did she?" "Because she paid attention, because noticing is an act of love." Marcus resumed wiping the counter. "And you never noticed her back." Daniel went home to his Brooklyn brownstone, the one he'd bought 3 years ago to escape the chaos of Manhattan, to find some peace, some routine, some small corner of normal in his high-stakes life. The brownstone was beautiful. 3 stories, original details lovingly restored, filled with expensive furniture and carefully chosen art. It felt empty. He'd lived here 3 years and could count on one hand the number of meaningful conversations he'd had within these walls. His life was work and more work, punctuated by the morning routine at Cornerstone Cafe. The routine Emma had made perfect. He made himself dinner, takeout from the Thai place down the street, ate alone at his dining table, checking his phone, scanning reports, doing exactly what he'd been doing for years. Except now it felt hollow. His phone buzzed, text from his brother Ryan. "Still on for Sunday brunch." Daniel stared at the message. When had they made those plans? He scrolled back through their conversation, 2 weeks ago. He'd agreed without really thinking about it, the way he agreed to most personal things, absent-mindedly, already thinking about work. He typed back, "Yeah, 11 at the usual place." "You mean the place Emma works?" Daniel's heart stopped. "Worked, past tense. Today was her last day." "Oh shit, you finally noticed her." "What do you mean, finally?" "Dude, I've been meeting you for brunch there for a year. Emma's been in love with you the entire time. It's been painful to watch." Daniel called him immediately. "You knew," he demanded when Ryan answered. "Everyone knew except you, apparently." Ryan's voice was equal parts amused and exasperated. "The woman literally memorized your coffee order, your schedule, your moods. She lit up every time you walked in the door. It was obvious." "Why didn't you say something?" "Would you have listened?" Ryan challenged. "You've been on relationship autopilot since Amanda. Ever since she left you for that tech bro, you've been." "Don't," Daniel warned. "Emotionally unavailable," Ryan finished anyway. You've spent 5 years building walls, Daniel. Emma was trying to quietly slip through them, and you didn't even notice the door was open. Amanda, his ex-fiancée, the one who'd left him 6 months before their wedding because, in her words, loving you is like loving a corporation, impressive but ultimately unsatisfying. He'd thrown himself into work after that, built his hedge fund into something legendary, made billions, proved he was successful, valuable, worthy. And in the process, he'd done exactly what Amanda accused him of, become more corporation than man. I need to fix this, Daniel said. How? I don't know. I'll figure it out. Daniel, Ryan's voice softened. You can't fix this like you fix a bad investment. You can't throw money at it or strategize your way to a solution. You hurt her. For 3 years, you made her feel invisible. That's not something you fix. It's something you have to earn your way back from. Then how do I earn it? Start by actually seeing her, not the barista who made your coffee. Emma, the actual person with her own life and dreams and complexity. Learn who she is, and then maybe she'll let you prove you've changed. Daniel spent the weekend doing something he hadn't done in years. Nothing. No work, no calls, no emails. He just thought. About Emma, about the past 3 years, about every morning he'd walked into that cafe and taken her labor for granted. She'd known he liked his coffee slightly cooler. How had she known that? He never told her. She'd saved his table. Why? He'd never asked her to. She brought him a second coffee during that snowstorm. He'd been grateful, but he'd never thought to ask why she'd done it. Never considered it might be because she cared about him specifically, not just about customer service. 3 years of small kindnesses, and he'd noticed none of them. Or worse, he'd noticed and categorized them as good service, rather than what they actually were, love. Monday morning, he didn't go to Cornerstone Cafe. The absence felt wrong. His whole day felt off-kilter without the routine, without Emma. He'd built his life around her care and never acknowledged it. Tuesday he broke. Walked to the cafe at 7:15 a.m. out of pure habit. A new barista was behind the counter, young guy, friendly, competent. What can I get you? Flat white extra shot oat milk. The coffee was fine, perfectly adequate. It tasted like ashes. Daniel took his corner table, empty, as usual, and realized Emma must have been managing that for years, subtly directing other customers to different seats, holding the table for him without making it obvious. She'd been orchestrating his comfort invisibly. He pulled out his phone and did what he should have done years ago, actually looked for information about Emma Chen. Found her Instagram, private, but the profile picture showed her in front of a bookshelf, smiling. Found a blog she'd written for a local literary magazine about the intersection of coffee culture and community. Found a tutoring profile where students praised her patience and insight. Found a whole person he'd never bothered to discover. Daniel started showing up at the places Emma had mentioned in her blog. Not to stalk her, he wasn't trying to accidentally run into her, but to understand her world, to see what she saw. The bookshop in Park Slope she'd praised for its poetry selection. He spent 2 hours there, bought 3 books of contemporary poetry, read them cover to cover. The high school where she tutored. He didn't go in, just stood across the street, watching students stream out, wondering which ones had been helped by Emma's patience. The community garden she'd photographed for her Instagram. He volunteered for a Saturday work session, pulling weeds alongside strangers, learning about urban agriculture and neighborhood building. He was learning to see the world Emma lived in, the world he'd been too blind to notice. 3 weeks after she left, he ran into Marcus at the farmer's market. Stalking Emma, Marcus asked, not unkindly. Learning about her, Daniel corrected. There's a difference. Is there? But Marcus smiled slightly. She mentioned you've been commenting on her blog posts, thoughtful comments apparently, not the usual great post nonsense. Daniel had found Emma's Substack, a newsletter about books, coffee, and the quiet moments that make life meaningful. He subscribed, read everything she'd ever written, started commenting with actual thoughts, analysis, engagement, never mentioning who he was, just showing up as a reader who paid attention. "Is she okay?" Daniel asked. "She's working at a bookshop in Carroll Gardens. Actually happy, I think, not serving coffee to people who don't see her anymore." The barb landed, but Daniel took it. "Can you give her a message?" "Depends on the message." "Tell her," Daniel struggled for words, "tell her I'm learning to notice, and I'm sorry it took losing her to start." Marcus studied him. "You really care about her." "I think I've cared about her for 3 years," Daniel admitted. "I was just too stupid and self-absorbed to realize what I was feeling." "That's not love, Daniel. That's convenience." "You're right." The admission hurt. "But I'm trying to understand the difference. I'm trying to become someone who deserves a second chance, even if I never get one." Marcus nodded slowly. "The bookshop is called Between the Lines, on Smith Street. She works Tuesday through Saturday, usually the afternoon shift." "I'm not going to ambush her." "I know," Marcus's expression softened, "but she should know you're trying, even if she's not ready to see you yet." Daniel didn't go to the bookshop. Not that week, not the next. Instead, he kept reading Emma's newsletter, kept learning about her world, started his own practice of noticing, really noticing, the people in his life. Asked his assistant, Jennifer, about her weekend. Actually listened when she talked about her daughter's soccer tournament. Called Ryan and had a 2-hour conversation that wasn't about business or logistics, but about life, relationships, the ways they'd both been shaped by their workaholic father. Started therapy with Dr. Sarah Chen, different Chen, no relation, to unpack why he'd spent 5 years being emotionally unavailable. "You're afraid," Dr. Chen said in their third session, "of being vulnerable, of being seen as insufficient, so you perform competence and control and never let anyone close enough to discover you're human." "That's not," Daniel stopped. "Okay, that's accurate." "Emma got close," Dr. Chen observed. "She saw you, your moods, your needs, your humanity, and that terrified you, so you kept her at a distance by not acknowledging what she was offering." "I didn't even realize." "Because acknowledging it would have required vulnerability, would have required admitting you needed her care, that you were receiving love and didn't know how to return it." The truth of it was devastating. "How do I fix this?" "You don't fix it," Dr. Chen said gently. "You can't undo the past, but you can become someone different moving forward, someone who notices, who values quiet love, who understands that being seen and known is a gift, not a threat." 6 weeks after Emma left, Daniel walked into Between the Lines. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The shop was small, cozy, exactly the kind of space Emma would love. Books stacked on every surface, comfortable chairs in corners, the smell of old paper and possibility. Emma was behind the counter, helping a customer. She looked up when the bell chimed, and her entire body went rigid when she saw him. Daniel held up his hands. "I'm not here to pressure you or make grand gestures. I just want to buy a book." She studied him for a long moment. "Fiction or nonfiction?" "Poetry, actually. I've been reading a lot of poetry lately." Something flickered in her expression. "Any particular poet?" "I've been working through your recommendations from your newsletter. The Mary Oliver collection was," he searched for the right word, "revelatory." "You've been reading my newsletter?" "For 6 weeks, every post, some of them multiple times." He moved closer to the counter but kept a respectful distance. "You're an extraordinary writer, Emma. The way you notice things, find meaning in small moments, it's beautiful." She didn't respond, just kept watching him with careful, guarded eyes. I also read your blog posts, the one about how coffee shops can be third places, neither home nor work but something essential in between, and the piece about tutoring, how teaching someone to love reading is like giving them a superpower. He paused. You're brilliant, and I'm sorry I never knew that. Daniel, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I'm not asking for forgiveness or a second chance or even a conversation. I just needed you to know that I've been learning to notice, to really see the world instead of just moving through it. And I should have been doing that 3 years ago. Emma's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Why now? Because losing you was the wake-up call I needed. Because I realized I'd been living half a life, successful but hollow. Because you loved me quietly and I was too blind and self-absorbed to see it. He took a shaky breath. And because I think I loved you too, Emma, I just didn't know how to recognize it. You loved your routine, she corrected softly. Your comfortable life. I was just part of the machinery. No, he shook his head. I thought that too at first, but I've been thinking about it. Really examining it, and Emma, I came to that cafe every single day for 3 years. I could have gone anywhere. There are dozens of coffee shops in Brooklyn, but I came to yours. For the coffee. For you. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. I came for the way you made the world feel manageable, the way you remembered my order and my table and somehow knew when I needed silence versus small talk. I came because seeing you was the best part of my day, and I was too emotionally stunted to admit that to myself. Tears spilled over. That's not love, Daniel, that's dependence. You're right, it wasn't love then, it was me taking your love for granted. He stepped back, creating more space. But I'm learning what love actually is, and it's what you did for 3 years. Noticing, paying attention, caring about the details of someone's life even when they don't care back. So now you care back, she sounded skeptical, hurt. Now that I'm gone and you've had time to realize what you lost. Yes, he said simply. I know that's not romantic. I know I should have realized it while I had you. But I didn't, and I can't change that. All I can do is become someone different, someone who notices, someone worthy of quiet love. Emma wiped her tears. I can't just go back to how things were, Daniel. I can't be invisible again. I would never ask you to be. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket, worn, filled with his handwriting. This is everything I've learned about you in 6 weeks. Emma Chen, 29 years old, master's degree in English literature from Columbia, specializes in contemporary poetry, tutors high school students 3 afternoons a week, takes care of your grandmother on Sundays, writes the most insightful newsletter about books and life I've ever read. Dreams of opening a bookshop cafe that combines literature and community. He held out the notebook. It's not enough. 6 weeks can't make up for 3 years of blindness, but it's a start. It's me learning to notice, to see you. Emma took the notebook with trembling hands, flipped through pages covered in his observations, questions, reflections. Her breath caught. You've been paying attention. I'm trying to, he smiled sadly. Turns out it's harder than running a hedge fund. Actually seeing people, really seeing them takes practice. Intention. The kind of daily choice you made for 3 years that I never acknowledged. Daniel. I know I don't deserve a second chance, he interrupted gently. I know I hurt you, made you feel invisible when you were the most important person in my life. But Emma, I'm asking anyway. Not for things to go back to how they were, for a chance to build something new, something where you're not the only one noticing. She clutched the notebook to her chest. I don't know if I can trust this, if I can trust you. I know. You broke my heart. I know. And you're asking me to risk it again. Yes, he held her gaze. But not right now, not until you're ready. Take all the time you need. I'm learning patience. Learning that love isn't about grand gestures or convenient routines. It's about showing up, daily, consistently, noticing. What if I'm never ready? The question hurt, but he answered honestly. Then I'll respect that, but I'll still be out here becoming someone better. Because that's what you taught me, that loving someone means caring about who they are, not just what they do for you. Emma didn't give him an answer that day, or the next week, or the month after that. But she kept writing her newsletter, and Daniel kept reading, kept commenting with thoughtful insights that showed he was actually paying attention. 3 months after their conversation in the bookshop, Emma published a piece titled On Being Seen. It was about a woman who loved someone quietly, who made their life beautiful in invisible ways, and about how that someone finally learned to notice, too late, and then just in time. Daniel read it 7 times. At the end, she'd added a postscript. Sometimes love needs to be loud to be learned, but once it's learned, quiet can be enough, if both people are paying attention. He understood it was an invitation. Not to rush in, not to make grand declarations, but to show up, quietly, consistently, to prove through action that he'd actually changed. So he did. Started coming to the bookshop on Tuesdays, not to pressure her, just to buy books and occasionally chat about literature. Started showing up at the community garden where she sometimes volunteered. Started being present in her world without demanding she return to his. And slowly, painfully, carefully, slowly, she started letting him in. Coffee after her shift, conversations about books and life and the quiet moments that made both meaningful. Walks through Prospect Park where they were learning each other properly this time, with intention and attention. 6 months after she left the cafe, they were sitting in her favorite spot in the park when Daniel said, "I need to tell you something." "Okay." "I love you." The words were simple, honest. Not the comfortable routine version, not the "you make my life easier" version. I love who you are. The brilliant, observant, kind person who sees the world in poetry. The woman who notices people and makes them feel seen. The person I want to notice back. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "That took you long enough." "I'm a slow learner," he smiled, "but I'm learning. And you understand, truly understand, that I need to be seen. Not just occasionally, not just when it's convenient, but really seen. Every day." "Yes." He took her hand carefully. "And I need you to see me too. The real me, not the billionaire or the businessman. The man who still needs his corner table sometimes, who reads poetry now because you taught him to notice beauty, who's learning that vulnerability isn't weakness." "I see you," she whispered. "I've always seen you." "I know." He lifted her hand to his lips. "And I'm sorry it took me 3 years to see you back. But Emma, I'm looking now, really looking, and I'm not going to stop." She leaned against him, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the park move around them. People walking dogs, children playing, couples holding hands. The ordinary moments that made life extraordinary when you paid attention. "If we do this," Emma said finally, "it has to be different. No more taking each other for granted. No more invisible labor. No more me loving quietly while you're oblivious." "Agreed." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I'm learning to love loudly, to notice out loud, to make sure you know every single day that I see you." "And I'll try to speak up," she said. "Instead of just hopping you notice, we both have to meet in the middle." "Deal." They stayed in the park until sunset, talking about small things and big dreams. About the bookshop cafe Emma wanted to open, and how Daniel wanted to be involved, not as an investor throwing money at it, but as a partner who showed up to help stock shelves and learn about running a small business. About the life they could build together if they both paid attention. If they both chose each other daily. If they learned that love didn't need to be loud to matter, it just needed to be seen. A year later, Daniel walked into Between the Lines and Coffee, Emma's new bookshop cafe, opened with Daniel as a true partner, not a silent investor. She was behind the counter, making drinks and recommending books, doing what she loved in a space they'd built together. He approached the counter, smiled at her the way he'd learned to smile, with his whole heart visible. "What can I get you?" she asked, eyes twinkling. "Flat white, extra shot, oat milk, made by the woman I love." She laughed, that beautiful, unguarded laugh he'd worked to earn, coming right up. She made his coffee with the same care she'd always given it. But this time, when she handed it to him, he leaned across the counter and kissed her. "Thank you," he said, "for the coffee, for loving me quietly until I learned to love you loudly, for teaching me how to notice." "Thank you for learning to see me," she replied softly. He took his coffee to the corner table, still his favorite, but now shared with Emma during her breaks. And as he sat there, reading the poetry collection she'd recommended, occasionally looking up to watch her work, he understood finally what love actually was. Not convenience, not routine, not comfortable habit. Love was attention, noticing, the daily choice to see someone fully and honor what you saw. Love was quiet when it needed to be, and loud when it mattered. But most importantly, love was witnessed, seen, recognized. And finally, after 3 years and 6 months of learning, Daniel knew how to do that. He loved Emma quietly now, in the coffee he brought her during her break, in the table he saved when the cafe got crowded, in the thousand small ways he showed her she was seen. But he also loved her loudly, in words spoken daily, in choices made obviously, in the clear and constant demonstration that she came first. And Emma loved him back, both ways, because love didn't need to choose between quiet and loud. It just needed to be seen. Thank you so much for watching till the end. I truly appreciate you for spending your time here. It means a lot more than you know. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I really want to hear from you. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment. Your support helps the channel grow and brings more stories like this your way. Thank you for being here. More amazing stories are coming, don't miss them.